All right. Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Meta Pollywall with the Orange County Water District. And I'm excited to welcome you to our November webinar, where we will hear from the Orange County Water District and the Yorba Linda Water District about the construction of the nation's largest ion exchange Pfas treatment plant. So before we begin, I did want to mention that we are in webinar mode. So attendees are muted. That is to reduce some background noise. But we encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. We do have a number of attendees on today's program, and we'll do our best to address questions most applicable to the webinar topic here today. However, in the event that we don't get to your question during the time frame allotted, we can follow up with you after the webinar. So I do encourage you to provide an email address when you ask your particular question so we can make sure we get in touch with you after. And lastly, this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the OCWD website and the YouTube channel. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today. They'll give their presentations and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. So Chris Olson is the Director of Engineering for the Orange County Water District. Chris oversees the activities and operations of the engineering department and manages a variety of engineering projects for the district, including determining project feasibility, preparing requests for proposals, selecting and managing design and construction consultants, determining project schedules, and much more. Director Steve Sheldon has been an elected member of the OCWD Board of Directors for 16 years, currently serving as president. He was previously president of the board in 2008 and 2009. Director Sheldon has more than 25 years of experience in public policy and real estate development, managing hundreds of land use entitlement efforts before cities, counties, and special districts. And Roseanne Weston is the engineering manager at the Yorba Linda Water District. She is licensed in 2 states and has over 30 years of experience in the design and management of water and wastewater facilities, including a $1 billion capital improvement program. As head of the district's engineering department, she is responsible for managing the planning, design, and construction of water and wastewater facilities. So I will now turn it over to Chris to begin the presentation. Chris?
Well, thank you, Meta. Again, Chris Olson, Director of Engineering for Orange County Water. I just went through the participants list and see a lot of familiar names. So great that you're able to come out and attend this webinar. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. So constructing the nation's largest ion exchange PFAS treatment plant, that's what this is about. That is Yorba Linda. But before we get into that, I'd like to start off with doing give you an outline of what we're going to do. We're going to go through an introduction to Orange County Water District, OCWD, talk about who we are, what we do. Then we'll get into our PFAS program and talk about how that relates to our impacted producers. We will talk about current, past activities, what's led us to this point with PFAS and design and construction and all the things we've done to date. I will have Orange County Water District Board of Directors President Steve Sheldon. He will provide a few slides on OCWD legislative solutions. And then we will wrap it up with Roseanne Weston presenting on the Yorba Linda Water District treatment plant. Next slide. So for the introduction, so Orange County Water District, OCWD. I know a lot of people attending this webinar are probably pretty familiar with OCWD, but for those who aren't, OCWD was formed in 1933 as a special district to manage the Orange County groundwater basin and protect the rights to the Santa Ana River. So our boundary is shown in the figure in blue to the right. And as water flows out of Prado Dam down the river, we are diverting that water in the river by using rubber dams. We have 2 rubber dams. They're 7 feet in diameter and they span the width of the river. One's near Imperial Highway and one's near Carbon Creek Diversion by Glasell Street. So using those rubber dams, we are able to divert base flow in the river and storm flow in the river to our recharge basins, which replenish the groundwater aquifer. So if you add it all up and include a portion of the Santa Ana River that we own, we have about 1,200 acres of recharge basins and other facilities. And those basins and facilities are in constant use to help replenish the groundwater basin. So you're asking who's using this basin? Well, that's our producers. We have 19 producers. They are cities, they are water districts. They provide water to 2.5 million residents in North and Central Orange County. And they're currently able to provide 77% of their water supply to those residents. And the balance of that water is made up by purchasing more expensive imported water. So in addition to using the river and our recharge basins, just a couple of other items I wanted to mention briefly. We also operate a seawater intrusion barrier. And what that does is injects water into the aquifer to keep seawater out from our coastal pumpers. That's located in Fountain Valley. We have a small plant called the Green Acres Project, which provides tertiary treated water that's using a sand and anthracite filtration and disinfection system. And that's used mostly for irrigation. And we also have a little thing known as the groundwater replenishment system. That is our GWRS. That is our pride and joy here in Fountain Valley. That is our 100 million gallon per day treatment plant. It's the largest advanced water purification facility in the world. And we use that water to provide the supply to the seawater barrier. We also have 5 deep injection wells that are in the Santa Ana area. A pipeline that comes from our GWRS facility in Fountain Valley runs all the way up to Anaheim. It's 13 miles long. We divert that water, like I said, in the mid-basin injection area in Santa Ana to those 5 wells that make water go into the aquifer there. And then the rest of it goes into our recharge basins. Currently in the process of our final expansion. This is the last expansion we can do on the GWRS. It's going to get us to 130 million gallons per day. Next slide. Just want to talk just a little bit more on the GWRS. What we do, that water is taking secondary treated wastewater from our next door neighbors, Orange County Sanitation District, who now go as OC San. And then we treat that through an advanced water purification process. It's microfiltration, reverse osmosis, ultraviolet light. And that water is used as indirect potable reuse. So we want to point out there is no Pfas in the RO water. That is a very highly effective way to remove Pfas. Next slide. Okay, now we're getting into the extent of Pfas impact in our service area. So Pfas, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. It's the carbon fluorine bond in the compounds. This is in parts per trillion, these notification levels that the California Division of Drinking Water just recently set for PFOA, PFAS, PFBS. What is our driver that we found is for PFOA. That's where you have the notification level 5.1 parts per trillion, nanograms per liter, same. Response level is 10. So like I said, that's been our driver. That's been throughout our producers, the concentrations, that's been the one that's telling us, okay, something has to be done. I also want to point out that the public health goal process has begun, which that's part of developing the maximum contaminant level. We expect that MCL to be available in the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years. So who is impacted? We have 11 retailers. We call them producers in our service area. That's impacted by that 10 parts per trillion PFOA response level. And what that equals is about 1/3 of our total groundwater basin. So about 100,000 acre feet a year is currently unable to be served because of the Pfas concentrations in their wells. So what do? They have to make up that water by purchasing more expensive Metropolitan Water District import water. So given 100,000 acre feet a year, you take the cost of the Met water versus what we charge them and their pumping costs from the groundwater basin. And it's a differential of just over $50 million a year more that they have to come up with to provide water to their customers. So it's very expensive to them. And you'll see in the next slide what we're doing about it. Go ahead, next slide. So we made the decision to take the lead in determining what would be necessary to get the producers back in pumping, get the PFAS removed. What can we do? How fast can we do it? Next slide. So 2019, we started a planning study approach We put it out there to whoever was interested. We had 10 originally come on board to be part of the planning study. And what that did, we hired Carollo engineers to be part of this with us. And with them, we went through, we reviewed all of the laboratory data, we performed site inspections, we developed treatment alternative for each of the sites. And this was done for 10 of our producers. So each one of them had a report, extensive site visits, data evaluation, and we just went through and prepared these alternatives. It was based on size and cost and what their availability was for real estate to have treatment. And then we quickly learned that because of site constraints for the majority of these sites, it was looking like ion exchange treatment was going to be the most preferred over something like granular activated carbon, where you could have, let's say, 4 vessels for ion exchange, and it might take 8 to 12 vessels for granular activated carbon. And then it was also more preferred over something like reverse osmosis just because of cost. So each one of the producers received this planning study report, and it had the alternatives and recommendations built into it. And we considered it about a 10% design level. Next. So also in 2019, we started pilot testing. Next. We have a recharge basin in Anaheim. It's called our Warner Basin. It's right next to our field headquarters facility that has a well. And we were able to take that well, which also has Pfas concentrations in it. And we designated that well as being able to provide the water source for a Pfas pilot program. So we built an enclosure and we had columns brought out. Next. What we did was we had 8 carbon columns and we had 4 resin columns and 2 novel absorbent columns. So the ones on the left here are the carbon and in the background are the resin. So we took these and we operated them as if they were the same time frame you would in a regular full-scale system. So the carbon, for example, has a 10-minute empty bed contact time. That's how long the water contacts the media in the vessel system. The resin had a 2-minute. So it was made to mirror what it would be like in a full-scale system on this pilot level. Next slide. So also what we did in 2019 was staff developed and our board adopted a Pfas policy. And that policy was for Ocwd to provide the design and construction for treatment facilities. With that, we also realized, okay, what would be the biggest item here lead time wise? So I figured it's got to be these vessels. So these vessel systems are 12 feet diameter, 16 feet tall steel vessels. That's what holds the media. So we went forward and we decided we're going to pre-purchase 55 of these vessel systems. We did that with Evoqua and Ocwd. And this was a great decision. This worked out very well. It saved us millions of dollars and a lot of time. Basically, these vessels have been ready to go as our construction progress continues. They're ready. The contractor says, I need the vessels at this date, and we have them available. What we also did at that same time was said to our board, we need to provide on-call consultants so we can get design work going. So we awarded 6 on-call design consultant contracts. And what that did was give us the ability to start design quickly. And we also saved a lot of time and money with that, as well as with the vessel system pre-purchase. Next slide. So getting into restoring the drinking water source. Yes, design and construction are underway. We are working with 11 producers right now. That's the extent of what's currently impacted is 11. OCWD is paying for 100% of the capital cost. That's the design, that's the construction. And we're paying for 50% of the O&M costs, which is up to $150 an acre foot per year. So half of that is $75 per acre foot for our costs that we're providing. And then we came up with a goal. We said that we wanted to have all these systems online within 2 to 3 years. So that's been part of the process of pre-purchasing, the piloting, knowing what medias work best, having equipment available, having design moving relatively quickly, and then getting construction moving as fast as we could too. This picture you see right here, this is Fullerton's Kimberly 1A well site. This is a site that is complete and has been in operation producing PFAS-free water since June 30th. So that's a two vessel ion exchange system. Again, since June 30th, PFAS-free water. You can see a site like this, it's a very tight site. On the left, the well is in the background and the 3 pre-filters are in the foreground left. And then you have your 4 vessels, which are in 2 systems lead lag. And then there's some disinfection and it goes right into distribution for its customers. Next slide. So even though I'm saying we have a certain amount of systems, here's a total of what the well summary looks like. We have 60 impacted wells. 8 are in planning phase right now, 30 in design, 21 in construction, and 1 in operation. And we're going to be having several more in operation relatively quickly. Next slide. So our current activities, we have 10 treatment systems currently under construction for 4 producers. So top right, you have Serrano Water District. This is a 4 system, a two vessel system for 2 wells at Serrano Water District. And this is also ion exchange. This one, we actually recessed the vessels a little bit because they're literally right next to neighbors on the left and right, all around them. Their water district headquarters is right in the middle of a residential community. We also have Garden Grove well 21. So Garden Grove has currently 5 wells at 4 locations, and the 21 site is the furthest along. It's going to be in operation within the next month. Serrano is going to be in operation by the end of the year. Yorba Linda Water District is going to be in operation in December. So we got a lot going on. We currently are out to bid. Actually, we just received bids yesterday for East Orange County Water District. That'll be the next one to start construction. And then we have design ongoing for 6 other producers. So just a lot of items, a lot of design, a lot of construction going on. And again, this is what we're doing over the next 2 to 3 years to get these producers back to pumping their 77% groundwater instead of purchasing imported water. And also wanted to mention that we did start the 2nd phase of our piloting. So what that does is some of these vendors are coming up with new products, new resins, or they have something that they feel works better. And we're trying them out. You know, we went through the phase 1, we got some good results. We know what works. Now we're looking at what could work better, what could be more cost effective, what could be longer lasting. So that's what phase 2 is doing. So we're just going to keep trying different things out and learning more from it as we go along. Next slide. Okay, now I will turn it over to OCWD's Board of Directors President, Steve Sheldon. Don't hear you yet, Steve.
All right, wonderful. So I apologize, Chris, and thank you for that good presentation, and Meta for the work putting this together, and Allison from the Yorba Linda Water District, the presentation to come that'll be really good and technical. I'm going to just speak for just a couple minutes and go over the federal legislative situation that we have with the Congress now addressing the PFAS issue. They have legislation that will make PFAS a hazardous waste, and it would be subject to CERCLA, which is the federal hazardous waste law, so to speak. And in CERCLA, anyone that comes in contact with the PFAS, if they buy property, even though they didn't pollute the property, if they were in ownership in the chain of commerce or in any way, I'll say, touches it, there's a likelihood that you could be brought in as a polluter, even though you had nothing to do with it and didn't manufacture or sell it. So we need to have an exemption because as the water district, we are treating the PFAS and we'll be transporting the resin for incineration. We need to have that. We are concerned that the polluters that caused the problem, and we're cleaning up their mess, might somehow point the finger at water districts or wastewater districts who are doing the public good. And so we need to have a specific exemption. And you'll see here in the slide here that there's the PFAS Action Act, HR 2467, and we need to have an exemption there that calls out water and wastewater agencies. So I'll kind of get on more to that. The other important item is that the proposed legislation directs the EPA to promulgate regulations in the next 2 years. And in that process, we want them to continue their long-held tradition and statutory requirement to have a cost-benefit analysis of the regulations that they come up with. I mean, they could come up with this great plan to, take everything out, and it's going to cost us $1 zillion, and no one can afford to do that. And the lower income communities that are subject to this PFAS problem could not do it at all. So it needs to have some reasonableness. That has been the practice, the tradition, and the statutory requirement of the EPA to have this cost benefit analysis. We want to ensure that that is followed when they promulgate these new PFAS regulations in the next 24 months. So that's our main. I'm summarizing. There's a lot more information, but I'm summarizing the main issue at hand here. So we go to the next slide, please. Great. So how can you help? And how can what we would ask is, and I'm speaking to those that are here in the webinar from Orange County, from California, and even from the nation, we need letters into the Orange County congressional delegation and the California and senators regarding the 2 items that we mentioned. We've drafted letters for your pleasure to look at and massage if you'd like. And for those that are with an agency or with a city, we have a draft resolution that our board has passed. Other water districts have passed this resolution. We would ask that you would submit this to your agency or city or county to pass it as well. And if you're outside of California, but in the United States, then I'd say, please, you're going to be affected as well. If you're on here, you're concerned about it. And this affects everyone here in the United States. And we'll email the participants this resolution and this information. And those I'd like to say, we have some participants that are outside of the country in Israel and Australia and Belgium and others that I noticed on the registration. And so we'd like to say, be concerned as well what's happening there as you go to clean the PFAS from your water, if you should have it there. So I've talked quickly, probably too quick, but I wanted to summarize all the information. And I guess I will try to be available for any questions when the webinar is concluded and taking questions. So Chris, that's all I've got, unless you want me to add something else.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next slide. And now we have Roseanne Weston of Yorba Linda Water District.
Well, thank you all. Meta, Allison, Director Sheldon, and Chris, and all of our participants today. And I'm just very excited to tell you about our new PFAS water treatment plant. So next slide. So just a little bit about our history. So we are a special county water district, and we've been around a long time, and we've seen a few name changes over the years. But we serve the city of Yorba Linda, parts of Brea, Placentia, Anaheim, and the unincorporated county of Orange. And so that's a population of about 80,000 people. Our district is very hilly. So we have 19 pressure zones, and we pump groundwater from 250 feet up to about 1,390 feet. So we normally have 2 sources of water, but as Chris mentioned, we have had to shut off our wells. So our 2 sources of water are the treated surface water imported from the Colorado River and the State Water Project. And that's treated at Metropolitan Water District steam plant, which is located in Yorba Linda. And then, of course, our groundwater comes from the Orange County Groundwater Basin, which is nearby the recharge basin. So normally we use about 77% of our groundwater and 23% imported water. But now we're paying on imported water, we're paying about twice as much as we pay for groundwater. And so that works out to about $20,000 extra per day over a year. And it's, we just didn't budget for that originally. So we've had to make some adjustments. Next slide, please. So as Chris mentioned, actually before we engaged consultants, we were doing our own research here at the district, trying to figure out what's the best technology, what's the best media. So when OCWD entered the picture, we'd already kind of had a good understanding of what would work for us. We went on some of these tours with our engineering and operations staff together, which is really critical to do because operations, they're the ones who are going to inherit this plant, and we want to make sure it works for them. Also, one of our directors, Dr. Wayne Miller, he's an engineer and he's a professor at UC Riverside. And he accompanied us on those tours and led some of them. And he's been really instrumental to the success of this project. But we decided early on, RO would not work for us, too expensive. We didn't want to deal with the brine. We looked at the GAC. We'd need more vessels with GAC than ion exchange. So we went with the ion exchange. GAC requires a backwash system, so that's a larger footprint, more vessels. That means more money for both capital outlay and O&M costs. Chris told you about the pilot study results. It shows that ion exchange, at least on our water, does better than GAC. And we were concerned about the short chain PFAS compounds that are going to be regulated. And ion exchange tends to do better on that. Plus our flows, they vary a lot from day to day and during different parts of the year, from 8 million gallons per day to about 25 million gallons per day for groundwater. And the ion exchange system, it just works better with that flow variation. Next slide, please. And we conducted our own pilot test on our water, and we found that's very important, and it just really matched up with OCWD, so we're very happy about that. We piloted 3 resins, Evoquas, Purolites, and ECT2. ECT2 helped us put this together along with the others. And so we found that, we were able to demonstrate that these resins work well with our water. And that was very important for the state because it gave them a sense of comfort that this technology applied to removing PFAS was going to work along with these resins. Next slide, please. So we were initially going to build this plant ourselves, and we were so fortunate that OCWD agreed to build it for us. Allowed us to focus more on the other projects that we have going on, and we didn't have to put out the money. So Chris Olson, he's been a wonderful project manager, and we have a great team. We've got Tetra Tech, who provided design and construction management services, and Corollo, as Chris mentioned, did the preliminary work, and our contractor, Pacific Hydrotech, and they're a local Yorba Linda company, just a great contractor. Next slide, please. So we looked at many options. One was actually locating treatment at 3 different locations. Now, most of our wells are at our headquarters, and that was an option to put some treatment there, and then some treatment at some wells that are located down near the recharge basins at the Santa Ana River. And the only problem with that is we had to have a lot of redundancy, and that would require 28 ion exchange vessels. So next slide, please. We then looked at our headquarters, and this is the option we went with, to have just 1 treatment plant and to bring all our flow to the treatment plant. And we'd only need 22 vessels. And fortunately, we had a way to route the flow from our offsite wells to our headquarters, since we have a pipeline that goes right by our headquarters. And with fewer vessels, the capital and O&M costs would be less. And fortunately, we had space at our headquarters. We had to give up parking, but it really worked out. And also during our high and low flows, we could just circulate flow through all the vessels and not worry about the vessels being offline and any bacterial issues with keeping vessels offline. So we also blend flows for other constituents to maintain good water quality. And one plant made it just easier to do this. But although our plant will be run automatically based on water demand, and we'll monitor it by SCADA at our headquarters, it just really makes it easier for our operations staff to just walk outside and make sure everything is working properly. Next slide, please. So the total budget set aside by OCWD is 27 million for this project. And we predict, at least at this point, that the O&M budget is going to be about $150 per acre foot. Okay. With our projected groundwater use, that's a little over $2 million per year. Now, we'll know once we turn on the system and we get it up to full capacity, we'll have better costs. So design was completed pretty quickly in 9 months. Construction is going to take 1 year, and we should be getting our permit from the state this month to operate the plant. We'll be serving water in mid-December, as Chris had mentioned, and we plan on bringing the plant up slowly along with the wells that have been off for a long period of time to work out any of the kinks. And this works well because our demand is generally lower right now for water, and then it gears up during the summer. So we have a ribbon cutting ceremony that will be coming up. So I say stay tuned for that. Next slide, please. One thing that was pretty cool is Tetra Tech came up with this 3D model very early on in the design. And 45 people from our district got to put on these Oculus glasses and just really walk through the plant. I can't say how valuable this was. It just brought everybody in. Everybody could see it. Most engineers love looking at plants, but everybody else, they can't make heads or tail. I shouldn't say everybody else. A lot of people have trouble interpreting plants. And so we were able to walk through it, and it really helped for the operations folks because we actually made design changes as they were walking through the plant, you know, regarding layout, spacing, and so forth. So that was really valuable. Next slide, please. Now, I'm not going to go into each of the trains, but as Chris already touched on how these operate, but here's just a close-up of a pair. So we have 11 pairs of vessels, and the pipe, and these hold resin, and this will basically treat the water. So the piping gives us a lot of flexibility so that we can efficiently use all the resin to treat the water and keep our costs down. Each vessel will be filled with about a quarter of the way up with the resin. We'll have 10 trains, 20 vessels filled with Evoqua's resin, and we'll have 1 train or 2 vessels filled with Purolate's resin. And we're going to kind of do a side-by-side, and we're going to compare these results with the pilot testing results and maybe even a bench scale test that's new for resins and see if we can correlate those results. That would be very helpful for all of us. And then we can evaluate performance immediately, even before we put it in the vessels. And the state will require us to test for PFAS when we start up the plant. Then we go to quarterly testing and then monthly testing as we get closer to the end of the resin life and to change out. So next slide, please. So here is our plant as it stands today. I'm about to show you a video taken from our drone. And our production superintendent, he videoed this for us. We're very fortunate. But first I want to point out the following. On the far left, you'll see our 6 pre-filters. Now these filters take out anything that may negatively impact the performance of the resin. And they're about 5 million gallon per day capacity each. So they're 5 and then 1 spare. And then this is followed by the 11 trains or 22 vessels that are 12 feet in diameter and about 16 feet tall. And that's followed by what you'll see in the video is the booster pump station that has 600 horsepower vertical turbine pumps with VFDs. And you'll also see in the video, we installed 2 emergency backup generators, one for the plant itself and one for our headquarters, which we upgraded, and some new chlorination facilities. Those were at the end of their useful life and we really needed them. We will be paying OCWD back for that. So this plant will be permitted for 19 million gallons a day, but we'll have the ability to ramp up to 25 million gallons per day. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, we'll go with the video. right, and thanks also to Allison. Allison helped put that video together. So this has been a very successful project. We're in the home stretch. What we found is communication has been key. I mean, we worked, even though OCWD is managing this project, we worked very closely with the team as if we were managing it ourselves from day one, from design through construction. And we've met weekly, all the way through. And we've garnered support from all of the stakeholders. Everybody's come to our meetings. We keep everybody abreast of what's going on, including the state. And they've been very involved from the beginning. So I think they've developed a level of comfort that this is going to really do what it needs to do, which is to remove the PFAS. So one of the things in design is a lot of people leave out operations when they're designing plants, but they're the ones, as I mentioned, inheriting this plant. We want to make sure it operates the way they want it to, and otherwise we'll never hear the end of it. But they were there every step of the way with us in every single meeting. So in addition, it's important to realize that you're not just building a plant, especially at your own facilities, like a headquarters. We had so many other things that we had to fix when we were going through here. Like I said, the chlorination facilities had to be upgraded. They're at the end of their useful life. We took advantage and replaced the wall. I mean, that wall was not seismically upgraded or anything. We had gas lines that need to be replaced. And so we were taking care of some of these things, and obviously we'll reimburse OCWD in this project, but it's important to take care of those things. All right, next slide, please. So we did run into a few challenges, and our project was actually delayed by 2 months. And so supply chain issues are real. We're fortunate that OCWD, they purchased the vessels ahead of time and some of the other equipment up front. Also, word of caution, build in extra time for your gas and electric companies to put their plans together if you need that, and any permitting agencies, because we found that they were often still working from home or short-staffed, and that can severely impact your project. And I would say, don't assume that your as-builts are correct. We found many surprises in our yard. When you don't have a new site and you're dealing an existing site, you're always going to find that. Plus, we had sugar sand, and if you know anything about sugar sand, if you tried to excavate a trench, it just collapses. So we had conflicts with electrical and gas utilities, communication fiber optics line broken, some other pipelines encountered, but so we've had some power outages, SCADA and communication outages, and that always seems to happen when you're off work on weekends. But I have to say that overall, we've had a great team, great contractor. We've worked it all out together, and we're very pleased with our new plant. Next slide, please. So I just want to give a huge thank you to our wonderful team of people who've made this project a success. Our directors, managers, and folks from various departments and our staff have been very patient because, as you can see, our site was really torn up and has been torn up for a year. And everybody from OCD, from the director level and down, management and staff, they've been wonderful. We're really happy with the work and the collaboration that we've had together, and our consultants and contractor doing a fabulous job. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Meta and Allison for questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Roseanne, Chris, and Director Sheldon for your presentations today. We will dive into our Q&A now. And I just wanted to remind everyone, you can type your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to address all the questions we have. And we've been replying to some in the Q&A box as well as they've been asked throughout the webinar. So, keep them coming. And you can also email any follow-up questions if you think of something after the webinar has concluded. You can also always email us at info@ocwd.com, and we'll get in touch with you. So we'll go ahead and ask some questions. And Roseanne, Chris, some of them are, I think you can both answer if any one of you wants to chime in, but one of them is, will these PFAS systems remove Chrome-6 to levels below the currently anticipated MCL?
So Chris, did you want to take that?
Chrome-6, well, so PFAS, and as far as resin goes, it's selective. It's selective to what you're treating for. So the resin we're using is selective for the PFAS. So it wouldn't be part of a Chrome-6 removal.
Great, thank you. And speaking of resins, are the resins recyclable? And if not, how are they disposed of?
So with the resins right now, there's two options. You're either taking it to a landfill or you're incinerating it. They're basically considered a single-use resin. That's what we're dealing with. And majority of people are looking at incineration right now.
Great. How do you currently handle the IX regenerate?
There is no regenerant because it's a single use.
Gotcha. And then there was actually a second part to this question, Director Sheldon. What impact could HR 2467 cause?
For the water districts, they make PFAS a hazardous waste, as I mentioned, and we're concerned that there would be circular liability. For example, when the resin is transported, we are moving it, and that's one of the elements under CERCLA, and there could be something, and we don't think it'd be valid, but that somehow the public agency was involved in contributing towards the damages because they transported the PFAS from the plant to the incinerator. And it's really more legal gamesmanship, and we just want a clear exemption that says wastewater and water districts are exempt.
Great, thank you, Director Sheldon. What is your experience, Chris and Roseanne, with the selectivity of the resin for PFAS? Are there competitive compounds such as natural organic matter competing with the target PFAS? And to what extent does it affect the runtime of the filters? So a three-part question there. Yeah,
so obviously it does depend on what your water chemistry is. It does have an impact. You could have a longer life at one part of the basin than maybe you would at the other. It turns out total organic carbon does have an effect on it, and it could reduce some of the life. It's not significant from what we've seen, but time will tell as we have full scale. But there's also some other things we're looking at, some of the acids that are in the water, some fulvic acids that could possibly reduce some of the runtime. But again, nothing significant to where you're talking like, oh, wow, we're only going to have 2 months of operation. No, it's looking like on average, in general speaking, that you should be able to get at least 1 year, if not 18 months of resin life, for each use. Again, there's so many different factors. If you start and stop your system frequently, it could reduce the life. What resin loves is a continuous operation. Resin does best if you have the flow going through there at a constant flow all the time. But that's not real world. So right now, based on piloting, we're looking at it could be lasting 12 months, it could be lasting 18 months, could be longer, but we won't know until we get that full scale operations that are with some data to back it up.
I just want to add to that in our pilot study, we didn't find anything that was negatively impacting the resin. So we're very fortunate, more so than other folks who do have those things in their water. So we feel very good about the use of this product and our treatment plant, and that we'll have a longer life with our resin as a result.
Great, thank you. And this question also has to do with resin and sort of the time aspect. And please let me know if it's been answered already, but I wanted to ask it, what is the expectation for the exhaustion of the resins time-wise? And what will be done with the spent resin?
Yeah, I mean, asked and answered, but I'll just reiterate it again, just because as we have these systems in full scale operation, you've got a lead system and a lag system. So if you have a perfect scenario where you have the constant flow going in, your lead system based on samples, analyses, and looking at the results, you might need to change out that lead system, 12 months, 18 months. And then because you're getting exhaustion of the lead system, you're also getting some use of the lag system at the same time. It could be in the order of 20%. So let's say you change out the lead system and then you swap them, the lag becomes the lead, the previous lead gets the fresh resin, and then now it's running in the opposite order. So then now that one that's now the new lead that was the lag before has already been used up about 20%. So maybe now that's going to need a change out in 12 months. And then from there, it's more consistent. So the change outs will eventually become more consistent. And again, the change outs right now would be primarily looking at incineration, removal, and then refilling those vessel systems.
Thanks, Chris. And I got one more resin question for you. What was the thought process about using two different types of two different types of resin, as I think in parentheses, Evoqua and Purolite? Are they both being used in series, and in what order?
So at Yorba Linda, we're fortunate that they have one centralized treatment plant. We wanted to take an opportunity to see what they would do full scale. So when we awarded the resin, it's in our pilot, it looks like Evoqua's PSR2+ product has the longer life, and Purolite was second to that product. But we wanted to look at it as a full scale operation also. So of the 11 systems, the number one train is going to have the Purolite resin in lead lag, and then the rest of them will be the Evoqua's PSR2+. So we're taking the opportunity at Yorba Linda to see if those numbers in full scale corroborate what we saw in the pilot, or if it performs better in full scale. So it's just a way that we getting more information, learning more, gathering more data in a full scale scenario by having Purolite's product, lead lag system, and train number one, and then the rest of the Evoqua's product.
Thank you, Chris. Roseanne, there's a question about the size of the Yorba Linda Water District ion exchange system, and I do believe we also have a slide with more details that we can pull up as well. How much MGD, and if you'd like to elaborate on that a bit.
Sure. Okay, so no one likes you to get too technical, but I'm glad that we have the slide available. So we have the ability to operate within a window, which is basically, we can send about 1,000 gallons per minute through each of the trains at the low end, and about 1,600 maximum at the high end through each train. And you have to kind of keep it at that level, otherwise it's not going to perform well. And you can shorten the life of the resin. So that is, we'll give a presentation in future once we get it up and running to talk about the operations and how that's going. But during low flows, we'll have 8 million gallons per day going through our vessels, and we'll have to rotate them to keep them all in operation. And then at the high end, during a day, now we can't exceed it for a whole day, but we can get up to 25 million gallons per day. But the plant is actually rated for 19 MGD, and right now, or it'll be rated for 19 MGD. So we have some flexibility to handle our flows. But basically what we do is we'll use this treatment plant. It's all the flow will be pumped up to one of our reservoirs, and then from there it's distributed to the various reservoirs and the distribution system to everybody. But so we'll have more operational data later, but you can see some of the details on the equipment itself.
Great, thank you, Roseanne. And we'll keep this slide up for folks to take a look a little further. For the evaluation of performance, how many PFAS species are being tested?
For the performance, well, when we do our laboratory samples, it's the full range of them that we're getting the results on. So I don't know exactly.
I think it's 18 right now, isn't it? 18 analytes.
Okay, so we're getting results on all 18. Like I mentioned before, as we're learning more about this, the PFOA is the driver for some of the treatment decisions, but as we're getting data and doing our sampling and providing that data to DDW, it's all of the analytes.
So for at least our water and the OCWD's water that they tested, we're really finding that PFOA breaks through and is the main thing, as Chris said. PFOS breaks through later. We generally don't have a problem with everything that the PFAS that with the rest of the analytes. So we're very fortunate that we don't have to deal with those. So we will be able to operate this plant, and the plant does have the capability of removing all of the PFAS down to non-detect.
Great. And other than PFAS, what other benefits do the vessels provide to improve water quality?
Well, as far as removing other things, what we do is we blend our flows here at the plant. So if we have higher levels of other things, we mix it in with well water from other wells. And so we kind of do our blending at this location, and we have a blending plan on file with the state. So, I mean, so it does double duty, right? We can bring all our flow together, blend our flow down to make sure we meet all water quality requirements, which we do, and at the same time remove PFAS.
Great, thanks, Roseanne. Chris, I believe you mentioned this in one of your responses or earlier points. Can you talk a little bit about the incineration of the media? Where is it incinerated? Just talk a little bit about that.
I don't have a lot of information to provide on that, other than the companies who provide the resin are also the ones who provide the disposal. So, like, for example, Evoqua has secured use of a couple of different incineration facilities. They haven't told me where or who yet. That will eventually come out, but they do know and have told us that there are a couple different states in the United States that are fairly nearby to California that have these facilities available for incineration disposal.
Thank you. And speaking of disposal, is there an option also for the spent IX to be disposed in landfills?
There is. That is an option. A lot of people are preferring, from what we've heard in the industry, to go with incineration just because it feels like it's better, or that you don't have a claim to it forever. As when you dispose of something in a landfill, your name is on that for the life of that time it's in the landfill.
Great. Have you seen any compromise of the resin from high iron or manganese from the source water?
That is something that the resin does not like, is high levels of those concentrations. So for anyone that would have it, you'd have to have that to be in consideration, either blending it down or trying to remove it from the source.
And as a matter of fact, we did take one of our wells offline for that very reason. And unfortunately, it would have negatively impacted the plant. So we took it offline. But that's what we're doing, is we're blending everything down, manganese down, iron and so forth, so that it won't negatively impact it. We did look at trying to treat manganese, and it was extremely expensive, and it would require a big space to put that treatment technology in place. And plus we'd have to chlorinate and then dechlorinate prior to the plant, which we just didn't want to do.
Thank you both. Given the range of water treatment plant flows, any optimization in place to minimize energy usage from pumping, as pumps are on VFDs?
So what's really great is we only need that booster pump station when we reach certain levels of flow. So there's actually a bypass around that pumping station. But when we need those higher flows, that's when the each of the pumps will slowly kick on as needed. Good question.
Thank you, Roseanne. What are the influent concentration ranges of PFAS and Pupo in the influent and expected in the effluent of the plant?
So PFOA, now we had the ability to blend down before, but PFOA can be about 20 parts per trillion, and PFOS can be around 30-ish. So then we can go to non-detect with the treatment plant.
All right. Roseanne, I think this is a question for you as well in regards to some of the wells in the service area. Were the PFAS concentrations in the wells similar? If one or two wells would have significantly higher PFAS concentrations, would it be better to treat those separately at the well, or would it still be better to blend that water with the other wells to lower the concentrations?
Very good question. We looked at that. We looked at options of treating at the well site, but as the reasons I mentioned before made it very challenging. We'd have to have many more vessels to do that. And all of our wells were impacted. They were over the notification levels. And then when the response levels came down, I think all of them were over that. So we took those offline. So no, it wouldn't have helped us. We were blending before that. But then when we had the new levels come out, then we definitely needed a treatment plant.
Great, thank you. And we are coming up here at the top of the hour and do have some questions that we're trying to get to. You know, again, if we can't get to your question live, we will be sure to follow up with you after as well. But if I can ask maybe two more questions for our panelists.
Hey, Meta.
Yeah, Chris.
Do you mind if I'm looking at the questions? Do you mind if I just quickly answer some of them and then maybe?
Oh, that'd be great, Chris. Go ahead.
Push a couple. Yeah. So one of the questions is what is removed by the pre-filters, and that's just your typical like particulates, like suspended solids. That's the whole point, is you don't want to load the resin with any solids. So it's just to remove like suspended solids in the water. Someone's asking, what's the micron rating of the bag filters? It's a 5 micron. There's some questions here about the compounds themselves with that there's thousands of them. We haven't done any specific studies on them. I would defer to our Health and Regulatory Affairs Department, so we can respond back to you in the future on that one. And then someone's asking, why aren't we doing regenerable ion exchange instead of single use? Well, reality is because we're expecting it to last a year and a half. It's just that, and then there'll be also a footprint that's pretty good size for the regeneration facility, not to mention chemicals on board at the facilities for that too. So that's why it made more sense for us to go with a single use. Let's see. Someone says, what are some of the advantages of the combined facility as opposed to having different treatment facilities? Well, I think Roseanne answered that question, and it just worked out best for them in Yorba Linda's case to have a centralized treatment plant. More so because it gave them the opportunity to be in their backyard and be able to control all their flows through one system. And then there's one more question here, Roseanne, if you want to answer. It says, since the capital costs are paid for by OCWD, was there much of an impact on the Yorba Linda water rates?
Okay, so I think I mentioned that we're paying about $20,000. Oh, on the rates itself, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we've been able to manage the rates. We did have to have a temporary charge for PFAS. I'm sorry, for using imported water due to PFAS. So we did have that. And like I said, we've been very fortunate that OCWD is going to pay for the capital costs. And really the O&M costs, you know, we have budgeted for the O&M costs, and we're hoping they fall in line with what we budgeted for, which is our share would be $75 per acre foot of water.
Okay, great. And I think I'm going to answer one last question here. And someone says, with so many systems coming online, is there any concern about media availability? And there's always concern, but the vendors that we're getting material from have planned ahead. They've got ramped their production facilities up. So at the moment in time, over the next couple of years, there is media available. They are planning for it. They know what's coming and they're prepared.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. I should have had you lead the Q&A. That was great. You got through most of the questions. And Roseanne, thank you so much for taking the time to answer the questions as well. And to Director Sheldon, again, to all our speakers, really, really appreciate it. Again, for our attendees, if you think of something after the webinar, something piques your interest, please let us know. Please email us. You can go ahead and email us at info@ocwd.com. And I just wanted to thank you all again and send you a reminder that we will have a recording of this webinar available and posted online at OCWD's website and our YouTube channel as well. So thank you again to our speakers and all our attendees for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed it, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.